Tonight, the roots of the Capitol riot.
Jesus Christ! We invoke your name!
Why some are blaming an out-of-control ideology of Christian nationalism.
Christian nationalism as a political ideology is not drawn directly from the Bible.
Plus,
the Republican Party after President Trump. Why the former president's presence is set to loom large in American politics. And
the mainstream media had failed us.
Why the internet has become a hotbed of conspiracy theories leading Christians down the wrong path. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Can democracy and religious nationalism coexist? Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. Waving Jesus flags and praying in the breached Senate chamber. These actions by the mob making the horror of the Capitol Hill assault even more troubling, John.
That disturbing scene, Jenna, reflects a political ideology known as Christian nationalism. CBN's Heather Sells has more on what it is and why it's become so dangerous.
On January 6th, thousands of Christians came to Washington to support President Donald Trump and to pray. Later, however, many unwittingly found themselves in a crowd that would march on the Capitol and eventually breach the building, leaving 2 dead and more than 100 police officers injured.
I think it's the most shocking failure of security imaginable.
Many, including Capitol Police and Congressman Adam Kinzinger, described what felt like spiritual warfare.
I just felt a real darkness over this place, like a real evil.
Disobeying and assaulting police is a sin, whether it's done by Antifa or by angry Republicans.
Doubly disturbing, the mob's use of Christian symbols, such as these flags, and praying in the Senate chamber. Fair warning, this video is hard to watch.
Jesus Christ, we invoke your name. Amen. Amen.
Let's all say a prayer in this sacred space.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for gracing us with this opportunity.
Christian leaders have been quick to condemn the display.
There is no such thing as a righteous riot. It is the equivalent of someone breaking into a bank and asking God to bless the heist. This is a fringe, radical group with a religious zeal that comes with a myopic worldview.
To understand how and why this could happen, Georgetown professor and InterVarsity Press author Paul Miller says it's important to understand Christian nationalism.
Nationalism is very popular on the political right. It has eclipsed what I would call conservatism. Christian nationalism as a political ideology is not drawn directly from the Bible. It borrows a lot of Christian words and symbols and rhetoric, which is why it can be confusing for some Christians.
Christian nationalism is different from patriotism or love of country. It is a political view that asserts that the U.S. was and must remain a Christian nation, with other faiths taking a back seat on issues like religious liberty.
Religious liberty, to be true and consistent, needs to be religious liberty for everyone. It's not religious liberty for me, but not for thee.
Southern Baptist Albert Mohler warns against nationalism infused with any racial superiority, or that becomes an idol in our lives and can lead us away from our faith.
That kind of nationalism, even though it may claim a religious identity up front, it will eventually show itself to be idolatrous. If it requires me to deny Christ or forbids me to follow Christ obediently, then I will no longer pledge allegiance to that flag. I have no ultimate allegiance to that flag.
Conspiracy theories can also fuel Christian nationalism, and we've seen them seep into some evangelical circles. Half of U.S. Protestant pastors report it's entered their churches, according to new research by Lifeway. It's why leaders are calling on their flocks to search out the truth.
You should be able to validate what you share, what you spread.
When we're gullible and easily fooled, when we're the people who are posting conspiracies and the next thing saying, oh, the resurrection's true, all those conspiracies are too, it undermines our witness.
Miller encourages pastors to help their congregations focus on their heavenly citizenship above all else. Suarez says that can apply to the prophetic world as well.
I need to make sure that as a believer, as a Christian, that I'm more kingdom-minded than I am American-minded. We need to, as prophetic people, we need to re-examine and wonder, why is it that we're only getting prophetic words about American elections?
Ultimately, the local church can provide what many have lost, which is part of what's fueling political extremism.
There are many people in America who feel lonely, isolated, alienated, and in that isolation, they're gravitating towards the conspiracy theories, they're gravitating towards perhaps militia movements, they're gravitating towards extremer ideologies like nationalism because it gives them a sense of belonging and purpose.
That belonging is harder to find in a pandemic, yet may be more important than ever. Heather Sells, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Heather. Here with us now for this special edition of Faith Nation is Timothy Head, the Executive Director at the Faith and Freedom Coalition, and someone you might recognize from Heather's story, the Reverend Samuel Rodriguez, President of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference. Sammy, Tim, thank you so much for being here on Faith Nation. Tim, let's start with you. In an op-ed you wrote for the Washington Examiner about patriotism and nationalism, you say that they don't mix. So can you explain the difference between the two?
Well, I think simply put, I would consider patriotism as a healthy pride, a sense of belonging to a nation or to a country. That we do believe in America. That America is a tremendous country. It has rich history and biblical truth, and a strong heritage in Christianity. Nationalism there's an element of superiority or of exclusivity to it that I would actually argue that Germans should be, German Christians should be patriotic Germans, and Hondurans should be patriotic Hondurans. I don't believe that there's an exclusive or a hierarchy, if you will, among races or ethnicities or certainly nations or countries. And so this is an important. It seems like a small distinction, but it's an important distinction, and I think that we begin to make.
Yeah, Sammy, would you like to add in on that? What's your take?
Completely, I concur completely. The idea of Christian nationalism is both spiritually incoherent and theologically absurd. And there is a difference. I love what Timothy just laid out. There is a distinction. We don't want this to be conflated. There's nothing wrong with affirming that our nation was founded upon a Judeo-Christian value system. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's historically accurate. There's nothing wrong with, as Christians, us advancing and advocating for pro-life, pro-religious liberty, and biblical justice in the name of Jesus. There is something wrong when we drink the kool-aid of a political ideology of the notion that this nation is exclusively by Christians and for Christians. Absolutely not. So Christian nationalism, that fringe minority, maybe less than 1%, that actually adhere to that. It's a vocal group, but the Christians, those that are committed to biblical orthodoxy, to the centrality of Christ and the citizenship of God's kingdom above everything, we need to make sure that we let everyone know that group that stormed the Capitol Hill on January 6th does not represent true Christianity.
Sammy, you're making the distinction between patriotism and nationalism. I wonder where the whole concept of American exceptionalism fits in this equation.
Well, hold on a moment. I believe in American exceptionalism because as a former history teacher, it's a historical fact. We were exceptional in embracing the idea of God over man, man over government. That's American exceptionalism. It's not our military. It's not our cognitive bandwidth. It's not our free marketplace enterprise endeavors. No, it's God over man, man over government. And we were the first ones to ever articulate that. That's what makes us exceptional. Now, with that being said, I am a proud American, but I'm a Christian before I am an American. And I agree with Timothy. And with the professor that referenced this previously, I am not going to worship the flag. I worship Jesus. I'm not going to bow for any flag. I'm going to worship Jesus. So there is a distinction. We can be patriotic, but not drink the kool-aid of Christian nationalism.
Yeah. For both of you, maybe to Tim first, how should Christians participate in politics, if at all? What do you think, Tim?
Well, that's a great question, and I often kind of think of this in terms of stewardship, right? I mean, just like when you buy a home, one of your roles is to try to continue or pass that home on in the future as a better piece of property to the next generation or potentially to the next owner. I think of that in similar veins to our citizenship here in the United States. That one of the strong, I would argue, biblical fiduciary responsibilities that we have to the next generation and also to the Lord Himself is to actually be citizens and stewards in our cities, in our school boards, in our local, certainly states, and ultimately in national politics, to have our voice be heard, and for these values. Here at Faith and Freedom Coalition, we talk about giving Christians a voice in government. That doesn't mean that we separate, quote unquote, separate church and state, so to speak. We believe that that the principles of God should direct and inform biblical, or should inform governmental decisions. So to kind of retreat out of public arena, we believe is not only not biblically accurate, but also bodes really, really dangerously for any nation, America or any other.
Unfortunately, gentlemen, we are out of time. We're going to have to invite you back for more conversation. Tim Head and Sammy Rodriguez, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, guys. And coming up, the Republican Party post-Trump, how the former president's presence still looms large.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
I think as a father, it's my job, to lead, just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
And we want to bring in CBN News Chief Political Analyst David Brody for some analysis. David, good to have you with us. Let's start with this idea that the election was stolen. There's a recent poll that shows something like 46% of pastors say they've had congregants tell them about election conspiracy theories. And then you hear certain stories from lawmakers, like there's the one from Senator Bill Cassidy who says he would just like Trump to admit that the election was stolen so that his constituents in Louisiana will stop insisting that the Dominion voting machines were rigged, these kind of stories. To you, David, how pervasive is this idea of a rigged election?
Well, look, Jenna, let's start with this for a second. It's a bit complicated, right? Because if you say there's a rigged election or you say that this election was stolen, you have been branded a conspiracy theorist. And that seems to be the problem in a lot of what's going on here. For example, you cited that statistic regarding the pastor, and 46% of folks actually said this to them. Well, hold on for a second. What did they say to him, to that pastor exactly? What are they saying in the churches? I mean, it is one thing to say, Dominion software is out there and it's a whole big plot by Venezuela. It's quite another to say there were election issues before the election as it relates to certain certain states that didn't do that passed certain laws that they shouldn't have, and there's issues about voter irregularities after the election. So there's all different sorts of, quote, election fraud here that people are pointing to. So it's very hard to kind of put it all in one bubble, because if you say the words election fraud at all, you're branded a conspiracy theorist, and that is not the case whatsoever.
David, moving from the past election to the next one in 2022, how do you think the GOP should deal with Donald Trump, especially if he's going to be on the campaign trail, likely continuing to tell American voters how he won the past election?
Well, they're going to have to deal with him, John. He's not going away. He'll be here today, tomorrow, 2022, and probably even 2024. So it's not like something they're going to have to figure out. I mean, Donald Trump is going to be the number one voice hovering around the Republican Party at all times. And I got to tell you, it seems to me, John and Jenna, that this is a time for the Republican Party you have a game of kickball, and you've got Republican Party members and conservatives and all that having to choose sides and say, look, what side are you on? Are you with Liz Cheney and Mitch McConnell and Mitt Romney? Or are you with Donald Trump and the gang on the left-hand side? Or maybe it's the far right-hand side. But the point is that you got two clearly different sides in the Republican Party, and Donald Trump is the number one voice for sure.
David, after Donald Trump, who do you think will be the next leader of the Republican Party?
Well, Jenna, it's a great question, and it's really hard to say because we're sitting here in 2021, and it's hard to predict the future. I'll just say that Mike Pence will be out there, Nikki Haley will be out there. I think you'll see more from Tom Cotton and Tim Scott. I think you'll see still more from Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, believe it or not, even though today you might laugh at that. But the bottom line is that all of it's going to be superseded and circumvented by Donald Trump.
All right. CBN's David Brody, thanks so much.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, guys.
Coming up, the internet is now a hotbed for conspiracy theories, how that's leading some Christians down the wrong path.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Tonight, a survey from the American Enterprise Institute suggests white evangelicals are most likely to believe QAnon conspiracy theories. From church fines over lockdown violations to silent assent, threats to religious liberty are certainly real. But there's another cause for concern, not from the government intrusion, but from online chat rooms and social media. And now Christian leaders are sounding the alarm, John.
That's right. They're sounding the alarm about the lure of conspiracy theories in the church. Take a look.
From aliens.
Do you ever see such jerky-looking creatures? Typical Earthmen.
To Area 51.
Why not just shoot Kennedy coming up Houston?
To JFK, 9/11, and the death of Jeffrey Epstein, conspiracy theories abound. The most recent ones swirling around election fraud and martial law, all courtesy of a source known as QAnon.
This Washington, D.C. restaurant was the subject of a disproved conspiracy known as Pizzagate. Twice targeted, most recently in 2019, set on fire by a man with a history of mental illness. 3 years before, an armed gunman from North Carolina stormed into the building to free kids from a purported international sex ring that supposedly was operating from the basement. When he got there, he found no victimized kids, no basement either.
Though now rejected by some who brought it into the mainstream,
I want our viewers and listeners to know that we regret any negative impact our commentaries may have had on Mr. Alifana's Comic Ping Pong or its employees. We apologize.
QAnon joins a collection of conspiracies seeking to expose a global ring of political elites who abuse children. And the champion of the cause, President Donald Trump, who, despite the election, is still viewed by Q adherents as a man on a mission, a belief reinforced on social media where he's depicted as a superhero, or, as in this video, Moses,
who is on freedom's side. Let them come to me.
Separating the godly from the ungodly. That comparison and QAnon's sprinkling of scripture and codes have troubled a growing number of Christian leaders.
There are probably people in just about every evangelical church who aren't sure what to think about it. That's one of the reasons why I think we need to talk about it.
I'm Albert Mohler, and this is The Briefing. In a summer podcast, Albert Mohler, president of the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, joined other prominent Christians denouncing QAnon as it gained a foothold in some churches.
The mainstream media had failed us.
Mohler blames a liberal bias for sending people to questionable sources.
But our response to that has to be even truer than the mainstream media. It has to be more based in objective truth and verifiable truth.
Carl Johnson, a retired Marine Corps pilot who now leads a Christian discipleship program, says the information Q claims to have through high-level government security clearance would never be shared in the way it has.
These posts are also interspersed with Bible verses and things like that. So it's not just straight letting information out. It's sounding an alarm, and it's actually a bit of campaigning, and reminds me more of psyops and propaganda.
For Mohler, it all boils down to two issues. First, credibility.
We want to speak of the gospel as true, not truish, but true. And thus, if we are found to be communicating things that turn out not to be true in other arenas of life, it weakens our witness to bear to the truth of Christianity, to bear witness to the gospel of Jesus Christ, the only message that saves.
He also points to history, highlighting a rift in the early church when some claim salvation through secret wisdom. Mohler notes the Apostle John called that heresy.
He speaks of Jesus Christ, whom we have seen, whom we have touched with our hands, whom we have, heard in the flesh. It's public truth. But, if you have secret knowledge, that's at the expense of biblical Christianity.
Now filling online message boards with personal stories of family breakups.
Christ is King! Christ is King!
And linked to multiple reports of vandalism and violence. Darrell Bach, a professor at Dallas Theological Seminary, warns of other issues at odds with biblical teaching.
So if I'm making charges that are actually false, that deal with someone's reputation, that's slander.
Even so, these leaders agree most who follow QAnon have the right motivation, just chose the wrong path.
We don't want to villainize or demonize people who hold these views. Most of these people are really, really good people. There's maybe some real good political instincts coupled with a real desire to live out Christ in this world and be thoroughly biblical in everything they do. And sometimes when you mix these elements together, they don't mesh as neatly as we think.
I do solemnly swear.
When it comes to waging the battle between good and evil, Bach says believers should take a page from the early Christian church.
The church in the first century had no social power, no political power, no ideological power, but what it did have was spiritual power. And that spiritual power was the authenticity of their lived out faith and the way they related to those around them. And they did quite well in that period. I think we could afford to learn some lessons from the first century church.
We should add, QAnon's hold both abroad and here at home is still strong. A January survey shows about 30% of Republicans have a favorable view about the conspiracy theory. That's even after the Capitol riot, as well as being labeled a domestic terrorism threat by the FBI. Still certain of a, quote, coming storm, Q's followers closely watch to see if their convictions will come true. For followers of Christ, the Christian thinkers we talk to say the only place to securely put their hope is in Jesus Christ alone. We'll be back right after this.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Watch On the Home Front today at 2:30. Get Protect Your Sleep and discover how to improve the quality of your life. A free DVD or booklet from the Christian Broadcasting Network.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
5 leading experts help remove the obstacles between you and restorative sleep.
When you don't get a restful night's sleep, you wake up with an accumulation of stress.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet today.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
You'll discover how food affects your sleep, how to put insomnia to rest, explore effective remedies for sleep apnea, and much more in Protect Your Sleep. Wake up to your best life and get Protect Your Sleep today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to CBN.com to get your free DVD or booklet.
Finally tonight, and Jenna, here's a great way to end the show, an unlikely story about how an immigrant farm worker went on to become a NASA astronaut.
Jose Hernandez spent his childhood traveling from Mexico to California, picking produce in the fields for months at a time. He was a math and science whiz and knew he wanted to be an astronaut, but 11 times he was rejected from NASA. Well, fast forward more than a decade to 2009, and Hernandez would become the first-generation Mexican-American astronaut. At the end of the first mission he did, weather forced the space shuttle to land in California instead of Florida, something Hernandez calls poetic justice.
It's about 80 miles from where I used to pick strawberries.
The former astronaut says that looking out at Earth and the vastness of the universe strengthened his faith in God. Hernandez, in a quote, "It's too perfect to be a coincidence."
What a great story. Well, thanks for watching Faith Nation.
Have a great weekend.